Good morning. Thank you all for joining us today and welcome Dr. Battle and her staff as well as other officials to police headquarters. The May 24th mass shooting in Uvalde involving Robb Elementary School sent shockwaves through all of Nashvillians. The fear of sending our loved ones off to school and seeing the sheer horror that happened to these kids, it was a tragic scene. Shortly thereafter, I directed Deputy Chief Mike Alexander to begin discussions with Metro Schools on enhancing our campus safety for all schools beginning this upcoming school year. This is nothing new between the police department and schools. Dr. Bell and I have always had a good working relationship and talk frequently. But this morning, I'm announcing the police coverage at all Metro schools to include all elementary, middle, and high schools will be at the highest levels ever. And all of our officers will have car key access to school buildings. First, our elementary schools. Beginning August 8th and continuing thereafter, officers will be present and highly visible in all elementary schools in an overtime capacity for several hours each day. Also, campuses will be visited regularly by officers from the precinct level as well as officers from our Special Operations Division to include our traffic crash investigators and our motorcycle officers. A longer-term plan calls for school safety ambassadors, which will be MNPS employees who are unarmed but given a radio with a police frequency and will work closely with school security and police to ensure safety at the elementary schools. I've also sent a letter out to all of our retired officers asking them to consider applying to be a school safety ambassador. Next, our middle schools. Middle schools will receive daily school resource officer coverage for several hours at a time each day on a rotating basis. Additionally, SROs will be teaching drug abuse resistance education, or DARE, as well as conflict resolution for all grades 6 through 8 in middle schools. Now, high schools. All 13 comprehensive high schools will have at least 2 school resource officers assigned on a permanent basis. And our magnet schools will have a coordinated presence as well. We will have more officers in the history of our police department working in our schools. And we're doing this to strike the right balance between making sure that our students and our teachers are safe, as well as protecting our businesses and our neighborhoods. The plan that we're implementing does come at a cost of overtime officers as well as school safety ambassadors, and that's anticipated to be between $5 and $6 million. Before I turn over the podium to Dr. Battle, there's a few concerns that came up, many really, but a few that I wanted to address today that came up in Uvalde. First is the concerns of the infrastructure of our campuses here in Nashville. We know that school officials as well as police officials did safety checks at every school to ensure that doors, windows, all are secure and cameras were working, etc. Another issue, and I recently talked to Metro principals about this, is that I was appalled by the lack of immediate response by law enforcement in Uvalde, Texas. And to ensure everyone that our officers are trained to immediately go in and address the threat. We don't group up. When in my early training, we grouped up, went in a diamond formation, and went in. Our officers are trained now that immediately they go in, and if they're shooting at us, they're not shooting students. And that creates a safer plan just to ensure that we will not wait around like they did in Uvalde for an hour. Not even 5 minutes. We won't do that. And finally, I sound like a broken record, but we have to ensure that we are properly securing firearms in our vehicles, in our homes, and making sure that they're not available to juveniles to use in crimes. Responsible gun ownership makes our city safer across the board. And now I'd like to turn over the podium to Dr. Battle who would like to share some words with you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. First, to Chief Drake, thank you for your continued partnership and always taking the safety of our schools at the highest level and making sure that we have what we need to keep everyone safe. I also want to give a thank you to our school board chair who is here with us, Ms. Christian Buggs, as well as our vice chair, Ms. Rachel Ann Elrod, my executive cabinet who's here, and of course, Chief Drake, your entire team for your work and again, your continued partnership. To all our MNPS parents, teachers, students, and staff, I want to speak directly to you this morning. Safety has been such an intense focus for public schools over the last few years. Whether it was for safety from a deadly contagious virus that shaped so much of the education world since 2020, or the need to address the social, emotional, and behavioral health of our students to reduce bullying and violence in schools, or the focus on ensuring our school buildings remain safe from outside threats, such as the gunman who took so many lives at Robb Elementary, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, Sandy Hook Elementary, and sadly, many more. At Metro Nashville Public Schools, we have been constantly updating plans, adopting best practices, making investments, and working collaboratively to address these challenges in a way that makes our students and staff even safer while continuing to operate in a welcoming and productive learning environment. After the latest school shooting in Uvalde, which tragically took the lives of 19 students and 2 teachers, we doubled down on working with Chief Drake and the MNPD to review our plans and see how we can make for an even safer and more secure learning environment. I am deeply grateful for Chief Drake's willingness to dedicate MNPD resources to provide an extra layer of visibility and protection for our students through this partnership. Having an active duty police officer on campus, keeping an eye out for our schools and providing a valuable point of contact for principals and administrators is going a long way and giving parents, staff, and students a greater level of confidence in their safety. Having additional staff inside schools as well, whether retired police officers serving as safety ambassadors or campus support positions, will help us to ensure that we're putting our safety plans into practice by monitoring for compliance and doing those type of pressure tests that will keep everyone vigilant and alert to their responsibilities around safety, while also ensuring our teachers and staff can remain focused on their daily job of educating and supporting all of our students. I think this is an appropriate balance between the desire for added security and safety and collaboration with the police department while not risking the criminalization of childhood behavior by using a policing response to incidents instead of our restorative approach. These are new steps being taken, but it is important to reiterate what has already been happening at our schools to keep staff and students safe. Every year, the MNPD supports our schools in developing emergency response plans to deal with the various potential external and internal hazards and threats that could impact our school environments. As a district, the support of Metro Nashville and the Tennessee Safe Schools Grant, we have made investments throughout our schools to enhance security and security vestibules to slow or prevent an intruder from getting into the school, a networked security camera system, classroom doors that swing out and lock from inside in alignment with best practices and fire and safety codes, and single entry points for visitors with camera phones that monitor entry, in addition to many other improvements over the years. This year, Mayor Cooper and Metro Council identified another $4 million in one-time funds that are being allocated towards finishing out our long-term security vestibule project and funding additional enhancements around added security cameras, fencing, lighting, and other safety and security measures. When it comes to safety in the school environment, we must protect against the threat of an active shooter and external threats. But we also must acknowledge the daily challenges faced by students in terms of their safety in our school buildings. That's why we have invested so much into supporting the social emotional learning health of our students through the creation of advocacy centers in all of our elementary schools and peace centers or restorative practice centers at our middle and high schools. These centers seek to use restorative practices to help students better process their emotions in a way that can reduce disciplinary outcomes that result in missed classroom instruction. These practices also can help more students stay on the path towards a successful life beyond school. We've also continued to strengthen policies and procedures around bullying and harassment to have added layers of review to ensure student concerns are being heard and fully addressed. Finally, I do want to stress that everyone has a role to play in keeping our schools safe and our communities safe, safer from gun violence. Congress has a role to play in keeping weapons made for war out of the hands of those seeking to do harm in our communities. Gun owners have a role to play in keeping their firearms secure and away from children at all times by locking them up in a safe place when they're not being used, which is why we've added this important note in our student parent handbook this year. Community leaders, faith-based organizations, and everyone else has a role to play in de-escalating violence in our communities that often spill over into our schools in such a way that disrupts the learning environment and makes students and staff feel less safe. Now, Metro schools will play our part, and I hope others will do theirs so that students can thrive and succeed in schools and go on to their college and career opportunities that leads to a healthy, productive life that breaks the cycle of poverty and violence in far too many of our communities. Thank you.